Subin had always been good at listening. When she was a little girl, she used to press her ear against the walls of her family's apartment and listen to the sounds of the building. The hum of water through pipes, the vibration of the power grid, the tiny clicks and taps that no one else noticed. Her mother used to laugh and say she had the ears of a fox. Now she was 27 years old, and she worked on Orbital Station 9, a research platform floating high above Earth's northern pole. Her job was simple. She monitored the electromagnetic field around the planet, watching for any unusual patterns in the energy that wrapped around Earth like an invisible blanket. It was quiet work, boring work, the kind of work where days blended together and nothing ever happened. Until the night something did. It was the middle of her shift. The station was almost empty. Subin sat alone in the monitoring room, surrounded by screens showing flat, steady lines. She was drinking cold tea and thinking about home when she noticed something strange. One of the lines on her screen moved. It was not a big movement, just a tiny ripple, like a stone dropped into still water. Most people would have ignored it. Most people would have called it interference or a glitch. But Subin was not most people. She leaned forward and looked closer. The ripple came again and again. It was regular, like a heartbeat. She put down her tea and began running scans. The signal was weak, almost invisible against the background noise of space. It was buried so deep in the data that the station's automatic systems had not even flagged it. But Subin could see it now, and she could feel it in her bones. This was not random noise. This was a pattern. This was a message. She worked for 3 hours without stopping. She cleaned up the static. She isolated the frequency and amplified it until it filled her headphones. And when she finally heard it clearly, her heart stopped. It was a human frequency. Not just any human frequency. It was an old one, so old that it had not been used for thousands of years. Subin had studied the history of human communication as part of her training. She knew every signal type, every encoding format, every transmission protocol that Earth had ever used. And this one came from a time before the silence. Her hands were shaking when she called Dongwon. Dongwon was the station's navigator. A tall man with tired eyes and a calm voice. He was 2 years older than Subin, and had worked on the station for 5 years. Nothing surprised him. Nothing excited him. He was the kind of person who would look at the end of the world and say, "Well, that is interesting." He walked into the monitoring room with his jacket half-zipped and his hair messy from sleep. "This better be important," he said. "I was having a good dream." Subin pointed at her screen. "Listen." She played the signal through the room speakers. It filled the air with a low, steady pulse, a sound like breathing, like something alive. Dongwon stood very still. His tired eyes grew wide. "That is impossible," he said. "I know. That frequency was retired over 19,000 years ago. I know." Dongwon sat down beside her and began running his own calculations. He tracked the signal's origin point, tracing it backward through space, like following a thread. The math took time. He checked it twice, then 3 times, because the answer made no sense. "It is coming from outside the solar system," he said quietly. "Far outside, at least 40 light-years away." Subin felt cold. Nothing human existed 40 light-years from Earth. Nothing human had ever gone that far. Except one thing. They looked at each other, and the same word formed on both their lips. Hanul. The protocol was clear. Any anomalous signal detected by an orbital station had to be reported to Fleet Command within 1 hour. But this was not just any anomalous signal. This was a ghost from 20,000 years ago. If Subin was wrong, she would be laughed at. If she was right, everything would change. She sent the report. Fleet Commander Hana received it at 4 in the morning, Earth time. She was 53 years old, a woman with short gray hair, and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had served in the orbital defense network for 30 years and had risen through the ranks by being careful, patient, and never making a decision without thinking it through 10 times. But when she read Subin's report, she made a decision in less than 10 seconds. She pulled the classified archives, the ones buried so deep that most people in the military did not even know they existed. She entered codes that had been passed down through generations of commanders, each one swearing to keep the secret safe. The vault opened, and there it was, the complete file on the Hennel. Hana compared the frequency in Subin's report with the last known transmission frequency of the Hennel. They matched perfectly. She sat alone in her office for a long time after that. Outside her window, Earth turned slowly below, blue and green and peaceful. 20,000 years of silence had made it beautiful. 20,000 years of hiding had kept it safe. And now, the signal from the deep dark was about to undo all of it. Hana called an emergency meeting. Only 6 people were invited, the highest-ranking officers in Fleet Command, each one cleared for knowledge of the Hanwell file. They gathered in a sealed room with no windows, no recording devices, and walls thick enough to block any signal. The ghost ship is calling, Hana told them. After 20,000 years, the Hanwell is trying to come home. The room exploded with questions. Was it real? Could it be a trick? Could an alien civilization have captured the ship's signal and be using it as bait? Hana let them argue. She let them shout. And then she raised her hand, and everyone went silent. We have 2 choices, she said. We can ignore the signal and continue as we have for 20,000 years. Safe, silent, hidden. She paused. Or we can answer it. The 6 officers looked at each other. The old stories were not just fairy tales to them. They knew the truth about the Hanwell. They had seen the last image, the dark shape waiting ahead of the ship. They knew that something terrible lived in the space between stars. But they also knew something else. They knew that if the Hanwell was out there, still transmitting after 20,000 years, then someone on that ship was still alive. Someone was still fighting. Someone was trying to come home. The vote was unanimous. Hana contacted Subin directly. You found the signal, she said. Now I need you to guide it home. Can you do that? Subin looked at Dongwon. He gave her a small nod. Yes, Commander, Subin said. We can do that. That night, for the first time in 20,000 years, Earth sent a signal into deep space. It was wrapped in so many layers of encryption that even the most advanced alien technology would have trouble detecting it. But it was there, a whisper in the dark. We hear you. Come home. And from 40 light years away, something answered. It took the ship 14 days to cross the distance that should have taken 1,000 years. Subin tracked it every second of those 14 days. She barely slept. She barely ate. Dongwon brought her food and forced her to drink water, but her eyes never left the screens. The signal grew stronger with every passing hour, and behind it, moving faster than anything humanity had ever seen, came the Hanwell, or what was left of her. The first images came through on the 10th day, captured by long-range sensors placed at the edge of the solar system. When Subin saw them, she pressed her hand over her mouth and said nothing for a very long time. The Hanwell was not the same ship that had left Earth 20,000 years ago. Her original silver hull was still there in places, but it had been covered, almost swallowed, by something else. Dark metal, black as deep space, wrapped around the ship like armor. Strange patterns ran across its surface, glowing faintly with a blue-green light that pulsed in rhythm with the signal. The ship was bigger now, nearly twice its original size, as though something had grown around it, the way bark grows around a tree. She looked alive. Hana ordered a full military alert, but kept it silent. No public announcement, no news. Only the 6 officers, and a hand-picked crew of 40 soldiers knew what was coming. Among them was Lieutenant Jae-yun. Jae-yun was 31 years old, built like a wall, with a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. She had served in the Orbital Defense Force for 9 years, and had never once seen actual combat, because there had been no combat in 20,000 years. But she trained every single day, as though war could come at any moment. Her soldiers respected her, because she never asked them to do anything she would not do first. When Hana told her about the Hano, Jae-yun did not flinch. She simply asked one question: when do we board? The ship entered the solar system on the 14th day. It slowed as it passed the outer planets, as though it recognized where it was. By the time it reached the orbit of Mars, it had come to a full stop. It hung in space, dark and silent, the blue-green light on its hull pulsing slowly, waiting. Jae-yun's boarding team launched from Orbital Station 9 in 3 small shuttles. 12 soldiers in each shuttle, armed with the best weapons Earth had, though no one knew if those weapons would work against whatever was inside the ghost ship. Subin rode in Jae-yun's shuttle as the technical specialist. Dongwon stayed on the station, watching from the screens and feeding them data. As the shuttles drew closer, the Hanuo grew larger and larger in the windows until it filled the entire view. Up close, the alien metal covering the hull was even more unsettling. It seemed to shift and move, like liquid frozen in mid-flow. The blue-green patterns were not just light, they were writing. Lines and curves and symbols in a language no human had ever seen. "It is beautiful," Subin whispered. "It is dangerous," Jae-yun said. "Stay behind me." They docked at the original airlock, the one part of the ship that had not been covered by the alien metal. Jae-yun entered the codes from the Hanuo's classified file, codes that were 20,000 years old. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deep groan that vibrated through the entire shuttle, the airlock opened. The air inside was breathable. Jae-yun led the way, her weapon raised, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The corridors of the Hanel were not what they expected. The walls were a mix of the original human design and the alien material, blended together so smoothly that it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. The floor was warm under their boots. The air smelled like rain. They moved through the ship slowly, checking every room, every corner. The medical bay was intact, but changed. The equipment had been replaced with devices no one recognized. The engine room hummed with an energy that made their teeth buzz. The mess hall still had tables and chairs, but the walls were covered in those same blue-green symbols. It was in the command center that they found them. The door opened, and Jae-yun stepped inside with her weapon ready. What she saw made her lower it. People, dozens of them, sitting and standing in a wide, circular room. They wore clothes that were part human fabric and part something else. That same dark material from the hull, woven into their garments like thread. Their skin was pale from years without sunlight, but their eyes were bright, alert, human. They had been waiting. A woman stepped forward from the group. She was small, with short dark hair and eyes that looked far older than her face. She moved slowly, carefully, as though she had not walked toward strangers in a very long time. "My name is Yoon So," she said. Her voice was steady, but there was something in it that sounded like it might break. "I was the pilot of this ship. I have been waiting a very long time to say these words." She took a breath. "We are home." Jae-yun stared at her. "That is not possible. The Hanaul launched 20,000 years ago. You cannot be the original pilot." Yoon So smiled, and it was the saddest smile Jae-yun had ever seen. "The thing that found us in the dark," Yoon So said, "it was not what we feared. It was not a monster. It was a library, a living library, older than most stars. It had been collecting knowledge from across the galaxy for millions of years, and it was dying. It needed someone to carry its memories forward. She touched the wall of the command center, and the blue-green symbols flared brighter in response. It chose us. It wrapped itself around our ship and kept us alive. It changed our bodies so that time could not touch us. And it filled our minds with everything it knew. Star maps, languages, histories, technologies, 20,000 years of knowledge from 1,000 civilizations. Subin stepped forward, her eyes wide. You have been alive this entire time? Not all of us. Yunso's voice dropped. We were 300 when we left Earth. We are 87 now. The rest. She paused, and grief passed across her face like a shadow. The library's gift was not gentle. Not everyone survived the change. Captain Teho was the first to fall. He held on long enough to make sure the rest of us were safe, and then he let go. A room was silent. Jae-yoon looked at the 87 survivors. People who had left Earth 20,000 years ago, who had lived through something no human mind was built to understand, and who had somehow found their way back. Why did you come back now? Jae-yoon asked. After all this time. Yunso's face changed. The sadness left her eyes, and something harder took its place. Something like steel. Because the library did not just give us knowledge, she said. It gave us a warning. Something is coming. Something that has destroyed 100 civilizations already. And it knows about Earth. She looked at Jae-yoon, then at Subin, then at each of the soldiers standing in the doorway. Your 20,000 years of silence kept you hidden, Yunso said. But hiding will not save you any longer. The darkness is moving, and it is hungry, and it is already closer than you think. Jae-yoon felt a chill run through her body that had nothing to do with the temperature of the ship. What do you need from us? She asked. Yunso turned and placed both hands on the central console. The entire room lit up, not just with the blue-green light, but with images. Star maps, vast and detailed, showing hundreds of systems, thousands of planets, and a dark wave moving through them, like ink spreading through water. I need you to listen, Yunso said, and then I need you to fight. Dongwon's voice came through Jae-yoon's earpiece from the station above. He had been watching everything through their cameras. His voice, usually so calm, was shaking. Jae-yoon, he said, you need to bring her to Commander Hana, right now. Jae-yoon looked at Yunso, this small woman who had crossed the galaxy and come back, carrying the weight of a warning that could change everything. Come with us, Jae-yoon said. Yunso nodded. I have been coming home for 20,000 years, she said. A few more hours will not hurt. But they all knew that was not true. Time was the one thing they did not have. Hana had prepared herself for many things in her 30 years of service. She had trained for asteroid impacts, solar storms, equipment failures, and even the impossible scenario of alien contact. But nothing in her training had prepared her for this. Sitting across a table from a woman who was 20,000 years old, and listening to her describe the end of everything. The meeting took place deep inside Earth's Central Command, a bunker buried 3 kilometers beneath the mountains of the old Korean peninsula. The room was small, cold, and lit by harsh white lights. Hana sat on one side of the table. Yunso sat on the other. Between them lay a device that Yunso had brought from the Hanul, a flat disk of dark metal, no larger than a dinner plate, covered in the same blue-green symbols that marked the ship. Jae-yoon stood by the door with 2 soldiers. Subin and Dongwon sat in the corner, recording everything. The 6 senior officers watched through a screen in the next room. No one else on Earth knew what was happening. Show me, Hana said. Yunso placed her hand on the disk. It hummed to life, and the air above it filled with light. A map appeared, not flat, but 3-dimensional, filling the space between them with thousands of tiny glowing points. Stars, planets, entire systems, connected by thin lines of light that showed trade routes, communication networks, and borders of civilizations. This is the galaxy as the library knew it, Yunso said, or as it was 50,000 years ago. Over 1,000 civilizations, some older than Earth itself, some so advanced they could reshape stars. Hana studied the map. She could see clusters of light where civilizations had gathered together, and dark spaces between them where no one lived. It was beautiful. Then Yunso moved her hand, and the map changed. They spread inward, swallowing the lights one by one. Slowly at first, then faster, like a disease spreading through a body. The lines of connection broke apart. The clusters of light dimmed and went out. In the space where life had been, there was only blackness, a rolling, expanding emptiness that consumed everything it touched. This is the Void Reach, Yunso said. Hana watched the darkness spread. What is it? An empire? An army? Neither, Yunso said. It is a hunger. The library spent millions of years trying to understand it. The closest explanation is this. The Void Reach is what happens when a civilization grows so powerful that it forgets how to stop. It consumes resources, then worlds, then systems, then entire regions of space. It does not negotiate. It does not trade. It simply takes, because taking is all it knows how to do. How many civilizations has it destroyed? Dongwon asked from the corner. The library's records show 412 confirmed destructions, Yunso said. The true number is higher. Many civilizations were consumed before they were even recorded. The room was silent. Hana stared at the map, watching the darkness creep closer and closer to a small dim point near the edge of one spiral arm. She did not need to ask what that point was. How long do we have? She asked. The library calculated that the Void Reach would reach this region of space within 100 years of our return. That estimate is 20,000 years old. Yunso paused. Based on what I have seen during our journey home, the Void Reach has moved faster than predicted. I believe we have less than 5 years. 5 years. 5 years to prepare for something that had destroyed 400 civilizations. 5 years to wake up a species that had been sleeping for 20,000. You said you brought knowledge, Hana said. You said the library gave you technology. Yes. Yuncio pressed the disk again, and the map disappeared. In its place appeared something else. Blueprints, diagrams, equations that filled the air with symbols Subin had never seen before. The library did not just collect knowledge. It collected solutions. Every civilization it studied, it learned from. Every weapon, every shield, every strategy that had ever been used against the Void Reach, it kept them all. Did any of them work? Jae-Yun asked from the door. Yuncio looked at her. No, not one. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bone. But, Yuncio continued, and her voice hardened, the library believed that the solution did not exist yet. It believed that the right civilization, with the right combination of knowledge, could create something new. Something that had never been tried before. And it chose us, Hana said. It chose humanity. It chose us because of what we are, Yunso said. Every other civilization the library studied was old, careful, logical. They fought the Void Reach with calculated strategies and precise weapons, and they all lost. The library believed that what was needed was something different, something unpredictable, something that would not follow the patterns the Void Reach had learned to defeat. She looked around the room at each of them. Humans are not careful, she said. We are messy. We are emotional. We make choices that make no logical sense. We fight when we should run. We hope when we should give up. The library believed that this chaos, this stubbornness, was not a weakness. It was the one thing the Void Reach had never faced. Hana opened her eyes. For the first time in the conversation, something like fire appeared behind them. Show us the blueprints, she said. All of them. What followed was the longest night in the history of Earth's command structure. Yunso opened the archives of the Hanul and poured 20,000 years of alien knowledge into the hands of Subin and Dongwon. Star maps with routes through safe space, shield technology that could protect entire planets, engine designs that could move ships faster than light, communication systems that could reach across the galaxy in seconds, and weapons. Hundreds of weapon designs from hundreds of dead civilizations. Energy beams that could cut through moons. Gravity bombs that could collapse a star. Swarm technology that could disassemble a fleet atom by atom. But the real prize was something else. Hidden in the deepest layer of the archive, protected by codes that only Yunso could unlock, was a single blueprint. It was not for a weapon. It was not for a shield. It was for something that had no name in any language. The library called it a seed, Yunso explained. It is a device that, when activated, creates a field of energy that reverses the Void Reach's hunger. Instead of consuming, it forces the Void Reach to give back everything it has taken. Every star, every planet, every atom. That sounds like a fairy tale, Jae-yoon said. The library spent 3 million years designing it, Yunso replied. It never had a civilization brave enough or reckless enough to build it. The device requires a power source that no sane species would create. It requires someone to fly into the heart of the Void Reach and activate it from inside. A suicide mission, Hana said. A sacrifice, Yunso corrected. There is a difference. Subin had been quiet for hours, buried in the data, her fingers flying across her screens as she decoded the alien archives. Now she looked up, and her face was pale, but her eyes were burning. I can build it, she said. The seed. I can see how the pieces fit together. Some of the technology is beyond us, but with the Hanul's systems and the materials we have on Earth, I can make it work. Dongwon, I need your help with the navigation calculations. The route into the Void Reach has to be exact. Dongwon nodded slowly. I have already started. Hana stood up. She looked at each person in the room. Yunseo, who had carried this burden for 20,000 years. Subin, who had heard the whisper in the noise. Dongwon, who was already plotting a course into the impossible. Jae-yoon, who was ready to lead soldiers into a fight that no human had ever faced. We have 5 years, Hana said. We will be ready in 3. She turned to the screen, where the 6 senior officers were watching. Wake everyone up, she ordered. It is time to end the silence. And deep beneath the mountains, in a room where the weight of 20,000 years pressed down on every shoulder, humanity began to prepare for war. They built it in 2 years and 7 months. Not because they were fast, because they refused to stop. Every factory on Earth was turned to the task. Every engineer, every scientist, every builder, every miner worked toward a single goal. For the first time in 20,000 years, humanity moved as one body with one purpose. There were no arguments, no politics, no borders. When Hana gave the order to wake the world, she expected panic, she expected riots, she expected denial. Instead, she got something she had not expected at all. She got anger. 20,000 years of hiding. 20,000 years of teaching children to be afraid of the sky. 20,000 years of burying the truth about the Hanul and the darkness that took her. When the people of Earth learned the truth, they did not cower. They burned. Factories that had been making luxury goods began producing ship parts. Universities that had been studying art and philosophy opened new departments for weapons engineering. Young people who had never looked at the stars suddenly volunteered by the millions. The old fear did not disappear, but something stronger rose up beside it. Fury. Subin led the construction of the seed device. She worked from the Hanul's archives, translating alien blueprints into human engineering with a focus that amazed everyone around her. She slept 4 hours a night and spent the rest of her time in the deep labs beneath the mountains, surrounded by holograms of alien technology and teams of engineers who followed her orders without question. The seed was not large. When it was finished, it was no bigger than a person, a sphere of dark metal and crystal, wrapped in coils of energy that hummed with a sound like distant thunder. But inside it was the power to undo the void reach, to reverse the hunger that had eaten 400 civilizations, to give back what had been taken. The only problem was getting it where it needed to go. Dongwon spent every waking hour on the navigation problem. The seed had to be delivered to the exact center of the void reach, a point that moved, shifted, and changed like the eye of a living storm. He mapped the approach using the star charts from the library, cross-referenced with data from the Hanuel's 20,000-year journey. He calculated routes, adjusted for gravity wells, accounted for energy fields that could tear a ship apart. "I can get us there," he told Hana, "but the window will be narrow. Minutes, not hours." Meanwhile, Jae-yun built a fleet. Using the engine designs from the alien archives, humanity constructed 300 warships in under 2 years. They were not beautiful like the original Hanuel. They were hard, angular things, built for speed and survival. Each one carried weapons, adapted from the library's records. Not the weapons of any single dead civilization, but new combinations, mixed and matched in ways that only humans would think to try. A gravity cannon mounted beside an energy lance. Shield technology layered with human-made armor plating. Systems that were half alien, half Earth-made, and entirely unpredictable. Jae-yun named the fleet the Biol, which meant star in the old language. She trained her crews around the clock, pushing them harder than any soldiers had been pushed in 20,000 years. "You are not just fighting for Earth," she told them. "You are fighting for every world the Void Reach has ever swallowed, every civilization that died in silence. We are going to make enough noise for all of them." Yun Seo watched all of this from the Hanuel, which remained in orbit around Earth. She helped where she could, translating alien text, explaining technologies, answering thousands of questions. But mostly, she watched. She watched these humans, her people, separated from her by 20,000 years, but still the same stubborn, reckless, impossibly brave species she had left behind, prepared to do what no one in the galaxy had ever done. She thought about Taeho. She thought about the 213 crew members who had not survived the library's gift. She carried their names with her like stones in her chest. On the day the fleet was ready, Hana stood before every screen on Earth. Her face was broadcast to every city, every village, every station. Billions of people watched and listened. "For 20,000 years," she said, "we were silent. We were told that silence was safety. We were told that the darkness would pass us by if we stayed quiet. And for 20,000 years, that was true." She paused. "It is no longer true. The darkness is coming, and it does not care how quiet we are. So today we stop being quiet. Today we stop hiding. Today we speak." Every ship in the Biol fleet powered up at the same time. 300 engines roaring to life in orbit, their light visible from the surface of Earth as a new constellation burning against the black. The fleet launched under Jae-yun's command, with the Hanuel at the center. Yun Seo had insisted on flying the old ship one last time. Subin rode with her, the seed device secured in the cargo hold below. Dongwon sat at the navigation console, his screens filled with the impossible math of their route. The journey took 11 days, at speeds that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. They crossed regions of space that had been empty for thousands of years, the edges of the Void Reach's territory, where stars had been stripped of their planets and systems had been left as hollow shells. On the 8th day, They saw it. The Void Reach was not like the image from the Hanuel's last transmission 20,000 years ago. It had grown. It was a wall of darkness that stretched from one edge of the sky to the other, so vast that it blocked out entire sections of the galaxy. It moved slowly, but it moved constantly, its edges reaching outward like fingers searching for something to grab. It was the most terrifying thing any of them had ever seen. Jae-yoon's voice came across the fleet communication channel, steady and strong. "All ships hold formation. We go in together and we come out together. No one gets left behind." The fleet entered the Void Reach on the 11th day. Inside, it was worse than anyone had imagined. The darkness was not empty. It was thick, pressing against the ships like deep water, slowing them down, pushing against their shields. Alarms screamed in every cockpit. Systems flickered and died, and came back to life. Soldiers gripped their seats and held on. But the fleet pushed forward. Jae-yoon led from the front, her ship cutting through the darkness like a blade. Behind her, the 300 ships of the Bile followed in a tight formation, their weapons hot, their shields burning. Things came at them from the dark. Not ships, not creatures, just shapes, masses of consumed matter, twisted and compressed into forms that made no sense. They hit the fleet like waves hitting a rock. Ships shook. Some lost shields. 2 were damaged badly enough that their crews had to abandon them and transfer to other ships. But no one turned back. At the center of the Void Reach, Dongwon found what he was looking for, a point of absolute stillness, where the hunger began, where the first act of consumption had happened millions of years ago. "We are here," he said. "Subin, it is time." Subin stood up. Her hands were shaking, but her face was calm. She walked to the cargo hold where the seed waited, humming with its quiet thunder. She placed her hands on it, and felt the warmth of 1,000 civilizations' hope flowing through her fingers. Yunso's voice came through the speakers. "You do not have to do this alone." "I know," Subin said. She activated the seed. The effect was not instant. It was slow, like the first light of dawn. A glow spread from the seed, soft and warm, and it pushed back the darkness. Not violently, not with force. It simply undid it. Where the hunger had taken, the seed gave back. Where there had been emptiness, light returned. Stars flickered to life in the distance, one by one, like candles being lit in a long dark room. The Void Reach shuddered. For the first time in millions of years, it felt something it had never felt before. Resistance. The fleet held its position around the Hanu as the seed's light spread outward, faster and faster, rippling through the darkness like a wave. Alarms stopped screaming. Shields stabilized. The pressing weight of the Void Reach began to lift. And then, from the Hanuel's communications array, Subin did something that was not in the plan. She opened every frequency, every channel, every band, every wavelength that the alien archives had taught her. She opened them all at once and broadcast a single message into the healing galaxy. Her voice, small and human and shaking, spoke words that carried across light years. "We are humanity. We were silent for 20,000 years. We are silent no more. We remember every world that was lost. We carry their names, and we are here to bring them back." Across the galaxy, on 1,000 dead frequencies that had been quiet for centuries, the message arrived. Civilizations that had been hiding like Earth, sealed behind their own walls of silence, heard a human voice for the first time. And they listened. The Void Reach stopped expanding. It did not die. It did not disappear. But for the first time in its endless existence, it paused. The seed's light held it in place, and the fleet's weapons kept it from pushing back. It was not a victory. Not yet. It was a beginning. Jae-yoon brought the fleet home. Every ship, every soldier, not one left behind. When they returned to Earth, the sky was full of signals. Dozens of civilizations, woken by Subin's message, were reaching out. Some were grateful, some were afraid, some were angry, but all of them were talking. Yun Seo stood on the bridge of the Hanul and watched Earth grow larger in the window. She was tired. She was older than any human had a right to be. But for the first time in 20,000 years, she smiled without sadness. Beside her, Subin listened to the signals pouring in from across the galaxy. Dongwan plotted new routes to new stars. Jae-yun stood with her soldiers, already thinking about the next mission. And somewhere below, Hana looked up at the sky for the first time in her life, without fear. Humanity had spoken. The stars around Outpost Hana were always quiet. It was a small colony, sitting at the very edge of human space, far from Earth and far from any major fleet. The station floated near a pale blue gas giant, and the colony below it held about 12,000 people, farmers, miners, engineers, and their families. Simple people living simple lives on the edge of the galaxy. Commander Taeho stood at the observation window of the station and looked out at the stars. He was a tall man with tired eyes and short gray hair. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 20 years, and they had sent him here to watch over this quiet corner of space. Nothing ever happened at Outpost Hana. That was the point. It was supposed to be a retirement post. He took a sip of his coffee and turned back to the control room. A handful of officers sat at their stations, watching screens that showed nothing but empty space. The biggest event of the week had been a cargo ship arriving with medical supplies and fresh food from the inner colonies. "Anything on the scanners?" Taeho asked. Lieutenant Boram shook her head without looking up. "Nothing, sir. Same as always." Taeho nodded. He walked to his chair and sat down. He thought about the letter he had received from his daughter back on Earth. She wanted him to come home. She said he had been out here long enough. He was thinking about what to write back when the first alarm went off. It was a sharp, screaming sound that filled the entire control room. Every screen turned red at the same time. Boram's hands flew across her console, and her face went white. "Sir," she said, her voice shaking, "I'm reading over 300 ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They are forming an attack formation. They are Velic." The room went silent. Every officer stopped breathing for a moment. The Velic were one of the oldest empires in the galaxy. They were tall, thin creatures with pale skin and 4 eyes. They believed that they were the rightful rulers of the stars, and they had been watching humanity expand with growing anger for decades. There had been tensions. There had been warnings. But no one thought they would actually attack. Taeho stood up slowly. His coffee cup fell from his hand and shattered on the floor, but he did not notice. He walked to the main screen and stared at the wall of red dots moving toward his station. 300 ships, he whispered. Outpost Hana had 6 defense turrets and 2 old patrol ships. They were not a military base. They were a farming colony with a flag on it. "Sir, what do we do?" Boram asked. Taeho closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he opened them, and his voice became hard and steady. "Send a distress signal to Earth Command. Send it on every channel. Tell them the Velic have attacked Outpost Hana with a full invasion fleet." Boram's fingers moved fast. "Signal sent, sir. Now, get me a line to the colony below." The screen flickered, and the face of the colony governor appeared. Her name was Miso, a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and a strong jaw. She saw the look on Taeho's face, and her smile disappeared instantly. "Commander, what is happening?" she asked. "Governor, the Velic are here. Over 300 warships. You need to begin emergency evacuation of all civilians into the underground shelters. You have maybe 20 minutes. Miso did not panic. She had grown up on a border colony herself. She knew what danger looked like. I understand. We will move now. The screen went dark. Tejo turned to his officers. Power up every turret we have. Get those 2 patrol ships in the air. I want every person on this station armed and ready. An officer named Kite looked at him with wide eyes. Sir, we cannot fight 300 ships. We have nothing. I know, Tejo said quietly. We are not trying to win. We are trying to buy time. Every minute we hold is another minute for that signal to reach someone who can fight back. The Velic fleet moved closer. On the lead ship, the Velic commander sat in his tall black chair and looked at the tiny human station on his screen. His name was Overlord Dreth, and he had 4 silver marks on his chest that showed his high rank. He smiled, which for a Velic meant pulling back his thin lips to show rows of small sharp teeth. Is this what humans call a fortress? He said, and his officers laughed. 1 station, 6 guns. This will be over before our weapons even cool down. His second-in-command, a younger Velic named Preth, leaned forward. A distress signal aimed at their inner systems. Dreth waved his long hand. Let them cry for help. Their nearest fleet is weeks away. By the time anyone responds, we will own this entire sector. The humans spread themselves too thin. That is their weakness. They think they can live everywhere, but they cannot protect everywhere. He pressed a button on his chair. All ships, begin the attack. The sky above the colony turned to fire. Velic warships unleashed bright green energy blasts that slammed into the station's shields. The entire structure shook. Lights flickered. Panels cracked. Tejo grabbed the edge of his console and held on. Return fire, he shouted. The 6 turrets on the station opened up, sending streams of hot metal into the Velic fleet. 2 Velic ships took hits, and their shields flashed, but they did not fall. There were too many of them. It was like throwing stones at an ocean. The 2 patrol ships launched from the station's hangar. They were small, fast ships, each with a crew of 4. They dove into the Velic formation, firing everything they had. One of them managed to hit a Velic cruiser in its engine, and the enemy ship spun out of control and crashed into another. For a brief moment, the human officers cheered. Then the Velic fired back. A dozen green beams hit the first patrol ship at once. It broke apart in a flash of light and was gone. The second ship tried to pull away, but a Velic destroyer locked onto it and fired a single massive shot that cut it in half. Tejo watched the 2 dots disappear from his screen. 8 people, gone in seconds. He felt a pain in his chest, but he did not let it show on his face. Shields at 20%, Boram reported, her voice cracking. Keep firing, Tejo said. The station shook again, harder this time. A ceiling panel fell and crashed to the floor. Sparks flew from a console. One officer screamed as his station exploded in front of him. Kite pulled him away and pressed his hand against the man's bleeding arm. On the colony below, Miso was leading people into the underground shelters. Thousands of men, women, and children ran through the streets, carrying whatever they could hold. Some carried babies. Some carried photographs. An old man carried a small dog under his arm. Miso stood at the shelter entrance and counted heads, pushing people inside, one by one. Move, move, keep moving, she shouted over the sound of explosions above them. Back on the station, the shields finally broke. The next Velic blast tore through the outer hull. Air rushed out into space. Emergency doors slammed shut, sealing off entire sections. Tejo knew they had minutes left. He sat down in his chair one last time. He looked at his officers. Boram, Kite, the others. They were scared. They were young, but none of them ran. It has been an honor, he said simply. Then he pressed the emergency broadcast button one final time and spoke into the microphone. His voice went out across the stars, riding on every frequency, bouncing off every relay station between Hana and Earth. This is Commander Teho of Outpost Hana. The Velic Empire has attacked us with a full invasion fleet. Our station is falling. Our colony is under siege. We need help. If anyone is listening, we need help. The station took one final terrible hit. The lights went out. The screens went dark. Outpost Hana fell silent. On the Velic flagship, Overlord Dreth leaned back in his chair and smiled his sharp smile. "Mark it done," he said. "The humans at the border are finished. Send word to the homeworld. The invasion has begun, and our first victory was easy." He believed that humans were soft creatures from a comfortable world. He believed their expansion was built on luck, not strength. He believed that this war would be short and simple. He was wrong. He was very, very wrong. Because far away, deep in the heart of human space, a woman named Yuna was listening. And when she heard Teho's final words, something cold and ancient moved behind her dark eyes. She set down the report she had been reading. She stood up from her desk aboard the ISS Iron Tide, the largest warship humanity had ever built. And she gave an order that had not been given in over 50 years.